Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Exploring Energy and Productivity Savings, a closer look at the Industrial Assessment Centers, IACs, and the Implementation Grant Program. I'm Greg Profisich, Director of Advanced Manufacturing Technologies at CMTC, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. For those of you who aren't familiar, CMTC is a private, nonprofit organization that provides technical assistance, workforce development, and consulting services to small and medium-sized manufacturers throughout the state of California. Our mission here at CMTC is to help manufacturers improve their productivity and global competitiveness, and to provide solutions that grow the California economy. During today's presentation, we'll cover a lot of material in a fairly short time, so you may have some questions. If you do, we encourage you to enter them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll answer those at the end of the presentation. I also want to mention that this webinar is being recorded. We will send out an email with a link to the recording and slides tomorrow. I also want to mention, lastly, please note that the material in this webinar is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered legal, financial, or other professional advice. CMTC advises that you consult an appropriate professional to determine the best solution for your individual and unique needs. Our presenters today will be the directors of the 4 Department of Energy Industrial Assessment Centers, IACs, in California. Dr. Ed Chang from the IAC at San Francisco State University, Dr. Joaquin Camacho from the IAC at San Diego State University, Dr. Farzan Kazemafar from the IAC at San Jose State University, and Chelsea Choudhary from the IAC at the University of California at Irvine. Ed Chang is professor of mechanical engineering at the School of Engineering at San Francisco State University and a licensed mechanical engineer in the state of California. He has over 25 years of experience in thermofluid and energy conversion systems, previously served as the San Francisco State's IAC Assistant Director, and currently leads the new Western Center of Excellence from the Department of Energy's IAC program. Welcome, Ed.
Thanks, Greg. Hello, everyone.
Joaquin Camacho is a tenured professor in the Mechanical Engineering Department at San Diego State University. His teaching and research specialties are thermofluids, manufacturing, and nanomaterials. Professor Camacho has served as the SDSU IAC Assistant Director since 2017 and participated in over 200 industrial assessments. In 2018, he advised an IAC student research project that awarded excellence in applied energy research by the DOE. Welcome, Joaquin.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Farzan Kazemafar is an associate professor and associate chair of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at San Jose State University. He is a licensed professional engineer in California. He is the founding director of the SJSU Industrial Assessment Center and one of the co-directors of the Western Regional Center of Excellence IAC. His activities are focused on energy systems, sustainability, education, and training programs. Welcome, Farzan.
Thank you, Greg. Hello, everyone.
Chelsea Choudhary is the program manager for the UCI SMART IAC. SMART stands for the Sustainable Manufacturing Alliance for Research and Training. The UCI SMART IAC provides energy consulting services to local manufacturers and commercial building occupants, while training students in energy efficiency and sustainability. Chelsea's prior roles have spanned various manufacturing industries, including designing steel utility structures, validating industrial equipment, and quality engineering for the medical device manufacturers. Welcome, Chelsea.
Thanks, Greg. Hi, everybody.
Now I'll hand it over to Ed, Joaquin, Farzan, and Chelsea.
Thank you, Greg. So we've got a number of speakers and a lot of slides. I'm going to try to be as efficient as possible so that we have time for questions at the end. Overall, I'm going to start the presentation out with an overview of the IAC program, and then each of us will talk a little bit about our individual IACs, the 4 IACs here in California. Chelsea will talk about the implementation grant program, and then we'll leave you off with some additional information and next steps. Okay, so if I could just move right into the overview. The Industrial Assessment Center is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy. The program it comes out of the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, or MESC. And what IACs do is that they provide no-cost technical assessments to small and medium-sized U.S. manufacturers. This is something that historically we may have called energy audits. DOE sort of likes to, doesn't like the term audit so much because has somewhat of a negative connotation. And while our focus has certainly historically has been and continues to be on energy and associated cost savings, we do carry out additional technical evaluations for productivity improvements, waste reduction, cybersecurity, manufacturing resiliency, and we support incentive and grant programs that facilities may be eligible for. Next slide. Okay, across the United States, there are currently 37 IACs. They're all located at four-year institutions. In California, as you know from the introduction, we have 2 in Northern California at San Francisco State and San Jose State, and then 2 in Southern California at San Diego State and UC Irvine. I do want to note that DOE is currently establishing additional IACs at community colleges. These will either be standalone IACs, but more likely they'll sort of be satellite IACs for the 4 main ones in California. So moving forward, in addition to the 4 institutions that are presenting today, there will be other community colleges that can help support the IAC program. Next slide. The overall goals of the IAC program, primarily the primary goal is to reduce energy consumption in the US manufacturing sector as the funding comes from the Department of Energy. Of course, along with energy savings are associated energy costs and emissions reductions, both greenhouse gas emissions and criteria pollutant emissions. Additionally, the IAC program seeks to improve US manufacturing productivity, resiliency, and competitiveness, as well as to develop and train a skilled and diverse workforce for energy engineering jobs. To date, across the United States, the program has conducted over 20,000 assessments, made over 155,000 assessment recommendations. The result has been over 19 million MMBTU of energy savings per year. That's including electricity converted to MMBTU units. And in terms of cost savings, the average recommended savings per facility is more than $133,000 per year. Next slide. In the state of California, across the state, the IACs in California have conducted over 14,000 assessments, made over 11,000 recommendations, and made almost $260 million of annual cost savings recommendations. We make the recommendations. Of course, not all recommendations are implemented. We have about a 50% implementation rate, with over 5,000 recommendations implemented and about 85 million in annual savings implemented. Next slide. Okay, I've been talking about recommendations. You might be wondering what types of recommendations IACs make. They range from the quite simple things like installing occupancy sensors and setting back thermostats, but also include the more technically advanced and complicated, such as optimizing for power factor, installing steam turbines for energy generation, on-site renewables such as solar and wind. In the state of California, the top assessment recommendations relate to lighting in terms of lighting efficiency and lighting controls. They relate to electric motors, high efficiency motors, and variable frequency drives or VFDs, recovering waste heat, reducing steam and compressed air leaks, insulating equipment, and optimizing equipment operating schedules. These are sort of the top 6 categories, but across all of the assessments, there are hundreds of different assessment recommendations that are made. Next slide. Okay, you perhaps are wondering if you were interested in proceeding with an IAC assessment, what it would entail. In this slide, I sort of split it down into 3 different phases. There's a pre-assessment phase, which is everything that takes place prior to the actual visit to the facility. And in this phase, the IACs will communicate with key facility personnel, obtain as much information as possible before the visit, information that might relate to equipment inventories and details about the manufacturing process. We also importantly collect historical energy usage data from utility bills. And this is part of the energy balance that takes place as part of the technical report. We will also review with the facility the on-site policies and procedures that need to be in place when we make the visit. On the assessment day, we start off the day with a kickoff meeting and a plant tour and try to identify some preliminary recommendations. The bulk of the day is devoted to small teams collecting data. Primarily, this data collection relates to identifying equipment and nameplate information. We might also make measurements such as temperature measurements or boiler exhaust measurements to look at boiler efficiency. We might count the number of leaks, measure leak sizes. And then at the end of the day, we'll conduct an exit meeting with the facility staff just to go over the preliminary findings. Most of our work takes place after the assessment when we conduct a detailed engineering analysis of all the recommendations. We include engineering calculations and determine the amount of energy that could be saved. We also include a cost analysis with an implementation cost and a simple payback period. The deliverable of the assessment process is a technical report, a confidential technical report that's delivered to the facility within 60 days of the assessment visit. And we will also provide post-assessment support as needed and to support the report and also to help facilitate grant and incentive applications. Next slide. Okay, the IAC assessment teams are led by university engineering faculty. Primarily, we are faculty in mechanical engineering, although other engineering fields are represented. And the assessment team will include a number of students, 4 to 8 students, depending upon the size of the facility, that are doing most of the data collection, the engineering analysis, and drafting the report. All of this stuff does take place with quality control by the supervising faculty. On the campuses, we also have program management and marketing support by dedicated university staff. Okay, if you're interested in an IAC assessment, but you have some concerns, I've tried to put together this slide to address the most common concerns that manufacturers tend to have. First of all, IAC personnel, anybody that visits a manufacturing facility must undergo safety training. And the IAC personnel will also utilize any needed PPE, personal protective equipment. The assessment activities that IAC conducts will not disrupt the manufacturing operations in any way. And in fact, we want the manufacturing process to be taking place as it would ordinarily so that we can observe what happens under normal operation and make appropriate recommendations. The data collection that takes place at the facility is strictly limited to that is authorized by the facility. We like to take photos of nameplates because it's easier than writing down nameplate information in a notebook, but if photos are prohibited, we've done that before. Facilities might allow us to take photos of nameplates, but not want us to photograph the facility as a whole or the manufacturing lines or products. That's fine as well. When we prepare the technical report, we prepare it in a way so that it doesn't identify the manufacturer or any of the products or the specific location in any way. So it doesn't contain any identifiable information. And we also will not release that report to anybody we will of course have it at the IAC office at the university. And then we also are required by our DOE contract to share it with the IAC Program Management Office, which is located at Rutgers University. But beyond that, we won't share it with anybody unless authorized by the facility. And we will also, we're also open to signing liability waivers and non-disclosure agreements as needed. Okay, the eligibility criteria for receiving an IAC assessment, and this is dictated by the Department of Energy, is that the standard industrial code must be in the 2000s and 3000s, gross annual sales below $250 million and fewer than 500 employees at the plant site. This is sort of DOE's definition of small to medium sized. The annual energy bill should be greater than 100,000 and less than 3.5 million. and there should be nobody at the facility that can already do the work that the IAC would be doing, so no professional in-house staff. To facilitate driving to the facilities, the facility should be within reasonable distance, about 150 miles of the closest IAC. And given the geographical locations of the IACs in California, that shouldn't be a problem for any California manufacturer. There is some flexibility in these criteria, so if you're interested, you can contact your nearest IAC to inquire about eligibility. Okay, so let me move on to the next phase of the presentation, where the individual IACs will say a little bit about their experience and their success stories. San Francisco State established its IAC over 30 years ago in 1992. We've conducted over 600 assessments to date. And with this many assessments, we really have experience across all manufacturing sectors, but notable expertise in food processing, in heat recovery and thermal energy storage, in combustion processes and boilers, in electrical demand response, and also in assisting with on-site renewable energy implementation. On a per, we can go to the next slide. On a per facility basis, here are some average statistics. On average, 8.4 recommendations made per assessment, recommended 11% reduction in annual energy consumption and over $156,000 in annual costs. Of the recommendations that are implemented, on average, about 4 recommendations are implemented per assessment, about a 4% reduction in annual energy consumption and almost $60,000 in annual cost savings. These, of course, are averages. So for individual facilities, the values can differ and can range fairly widely. I did provide a link here that you can visit after the presentation for more detailed statistics on San Francisco State's IAC. Okay, just for a single slide snapshot of one particular assessment that San Francisco State conducted recently. This was for a metal can manufacturing facility. We visited and made a total of 10 assessment recommendations that were associated with 1 million kilowatt hours in electricity savings. Additionally, some demand savings, 27 kilowatts. 136 MMBTU of natural gas savings, and almost a 20% cost savings of over $94,000. We checked back in after a year. This facility had implemented 7 out of the 10 recommendations, the ones that are highlighted in yellow there. And I just wanted to note, I sort of circled on the bottom right here, the payback period for many of these recommendations is quite short. So many of them are very easy to implement, easy to justify implementing to the management. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to pass it on to Farzan, who will talk a little bit about San Jose State University.
Okay, thank you, Ed. So San Jose State University, we are one of the newest members of the IAC team. So the center was founded in 2022. And so far, we have had assessments at a variety of manufacturing facilities. So this includes injection molding, decorative glass manufacturing, machine metal parts, precast concrete, and chocolate and nuts factory. So overall, this covers a wide diversity of type of facilities. So next slide, please. And I want to point out, so in addition, I don't want to repeat the points that Ed mentioned. I want to highlight one of the assessments that we have performed recently and the range of assessment recommendations. So it involves installing solar PV for renewable energy generation, and then repairing compressed air leaks, changing lights to LED. So these are some of the common recommendations in the state of California, as highlighted by Ed. Then heat recovery, so from the compressor, so that the use of natural gas is reduced. Installing VFD on a cooling tower, pump and fan, so this will result in reduction in both energy use and demand, which is one of the concerns of many facilities. Using a boiler feed water economizer, this one can help reduce the use of natural gas in the boiler, and also insulating exposed steam pipes, that reduces the the loss of heat and use of natural gas. So overall, the cost savings amount to 32% with a payback period of 4.64 roughly 4.5 years. So this is without using the implementation grant that we'll be talking about the details later in this presentation. With the payback, which is about with the implementation grant, which is up to $300,000 with 50% cost share. So this payback would be reduced to 2.8 years, so which make it very reasonable and achievable for a lot of facilities. So next slide. And here are some pictures of our team at different facilities, and students, faculty are involved. So at every stage of the work, and students, they do learn the work here. It's for them to be prepared to become energy engineers in the future, and yes, they are supervised by faculty to ensure quality of the work. And with this, I hand out to Joaquin from San Diego State University.
Hello, thanks, Farzan. Hello again, everyone. At San Diego State, we have about 30 years of experience in the center. My colleague, Asal Baini, here on this webinar, has been here since the beginning. I have been involved for several years, not as long as him. Here's some pictures of us happily performing our assessments. And we're on number 642. And if we move on to the next slide, there's a few more details where for each assessment, we can put a number of about 150,000 in recommendations that they make. And hopefully we would get over about a half of those implemented. Sometimes they do go up to that high, sometimes a little bit less. So this year, each IAC is aiming for 20 assessments, and we've already finished those this year. So we're planning on starting next fall for the next round of 20 assessments to start. And our goals are to reduce energy usage, of course, but that also comes with the many sad fact is that still the majority of our energy source is from carbon fossil fuel sources. And part of our reports are to quantify, if these assessment recommendations are made, how much tons of CO2 can we estimate will be saved by not using that energy, depending on the source. So we can, last year's round of reports, we added it up to say that 150 tons per year of CO2 were saved in terms of the ones that were implemented. And so those are some points. And then each assessment has their different area. The local industries are varied across the country. In San Diego and Southern California, there's a lot of aerospace, there's a lot of materials and food processing, and a lot of biotech, and all of those have a lot of, so all these industries, they have a lot of injection molding, composite materials. So we have a lot of experience in those. And we also have a large experience in combined heat and power opportunities, depending on whether there's a large heat and electrical load combined in the facility. And we are getting more and more aggressive in trying to recommend and identify opportunities for solar and battery energy storage. And in the past, we've done wind energy as well. And of course, there's others that are other areas that have been mentioned as well. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide, please. Our center has a long history, and we have a kind of a summary that what we found in our operations, if we look on the pie chart on the left, is if you were to implement an assessment recommendation, it turned out that if you were to have the opportunity and implement combined heat and power, that would make a huge impact on energy savings. And that's what we see on this pie chart, that over half of the implemented AR's energy savings came from combined heat and power. This doesn't happen, this isn't available and feasible for all sites, but if you do have the opportunity and scenario in your process to implement that, it's very impactful. And then there's always a lot of low-lying fruit in terms of lighting, air leaks, HVAC that do add up. We do include those in many reports and they do pay off, but there's also a big difference between huge impacts and just getting the low-hanging fruit. On the right side shows what a typical, I mean, just from the numbers of recommendations we have made, that most of them come from lighting, that pretty much every site we visit, we can make some recommendations on have more efficient lighting, and maybe in the future that our California in general and our center's success in general, lighting is going to be the latest LED optimized, controlled, such that everyone is already updated already. We've already been seeing that. So though on the right shows typical recommendations we make, and then on the left shows the impacts that these having, whether you have CHP, even though we don't recommend, we only recommend it 10% of the time, it'll make a huge impact as it left. Let's move to the next slide, please. So again, here's another example of a typical set of recommendations we would make at one particular location. This here's an example of a silicone, rubber, metal, biomedical, or a biotech place. And we identified 14 assessment recommendations that we quantified and ran some analysis on. And this one was had a lot of low-lying fruit and more unique opportunities. Like, well, for example, if you look at number 10, we've been going into more facilities and suggesting that they replace a lot of their air compressor applications with battery-powered air systems. That's a relatively new thing for us. And then 11 is a pretty unique thing customized for them that we saw a process that they can improve. And we ran some numbers on what they can, how being more strategic with a valve on one of their cooling systems would impact their energy use. So this set of AR recommendations has some typical ones that all facilities can improve on, and then some more unique customization. And at the end, for this particular place, that one had over $500,000 in potential cost savings per year. So yeah, so with that, I'll go ahead and introduce Chelsea for UC Irvine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joaquin. Yeah, I'm here with UCI Smart IAC. That's the Sustainable Manufacturing Alliance for Research and Training Industrial Assessment Center. We were founded in 2021, so we are one of the newer ones as well. And we are responsible for doing both industrial and commercial assessments. So far, we've done about 20, give or take, assessments, but we have 11 that have been uploaded into the database so far. So out of our 11 that are in there, it's been about 1.3 million in cost savings from our energy recommendations, as well as 16 students have gone through the training program. And I always love a good opportunity to promote my awesome students. They did receive one of the Student Research Awards from 2022. And these Student Research Awards are, they're funded by the IAC program to promote some assessment-inspired research projects. So my students have been working on a project on blending hydrogen with natural gas as a step towards decarbonization. So they are working on that project now. They've definitely learned a lot and had a lot of fun. So, it's been a good project so far. Go to the next slide, please. All right, and then just a real quick snapshot of some of our initial client savings that we found. These are our first 5 clients that we did. We do always aim to get at least 10% energy savings for our clients. You can see here how it translates over into cost savings. We do a lot of solar recommendations, a lot of compressed air, kind of the stuff that they've already mentioned previously. With that, we've been able to see a lot of good cost savings for our clients. And yeah, I'd love to share a great success story with you. So this is with PowerPro Technologies. I did want to emphasize that PowerPro gave us explicit permission to use their name and their company name, their picture, this LinkedIn post that they did, and then share the results of their assessment. So normally this would be completely client confidential, but we're doing a nice case study here on PowerPro, and they gave us their permission to do that. But yeah, this is ParPro is an electronics manufacturer in Santa Ana, California. They make like PCB boards and other electronic components. Being an electronics manufacturer, they already had a very well-regulated facility. They have to keep a very consistent temperature and humidity in their facility. So they're already doing a lot of good energy saving techniques to begin with, but we brought our team here with some UCI faculty and staff, as well as UCI students and CSUN students that came and did a good energy assessment for them. We go to the next slide. So looking at some of the results from ParPro, one of the big ones that we found was to shut down equipment when they weren't using it, as well as we looked at their compressed air system, found some leaks, and hopefully an opportunity to reduce their air pressure. And then as well, we also looked at upgrading their windows, upgrading their lighting, and shifting their forklift charging time to off-peak hours, so some demand shift there. All in all, we ended up about $75,000 in recommended cost savings, which is about 33% of their energy bills. So turned out pretty well for them, which was great. And yeah, just some nice pictures of some of our fun adventures so far, some of my great students. Okay, so now the moment you've all been waiting for, we can dig into the implementation grant program, take a little closer look at what the program is, and then how you guys can also apply for it. So the Department of Energy is offering this implementation grant program. It's for small and medium-sized manufacturers, just like yourself, and it is aimed to help implement some of these recommendations that we made in IAC assessments. So you can apply for grants up to $300,000 with one-to-one matching, and any clients that received IAC assessments between 2018 and now should be able to apply. All of this is being funded by the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the bill that was recently passed. And that's really aimed to bolster the American manufacturing base by supporting some of these projects to improve both energy and material efficiency, increase productivity, and to reduce emissions at our SMMs, all aiming towards our net zero goals. So this eligibility, it is pretty similar to the IAC eligibility, though there is a few differences. So I'll go over it with you guys. You do have to be a manufacturer as defined by NAICS codes 31 through 33. You also have to be physically located in the United States and have received an IAC assessment between 2018 and 2023, the past 5 or so years. You are also could apply if you received a CHP TAP assessment or even third-party assessments, but that would be through a different application work stream, so different application procedure. But for IAC, you'll have a specific application. You have to have gross annual sales of less than 100 million, and then less than 500 employees. Again, that's kind of the DOE's defining smaller and medium-sized facilities. And then annual energy bills between 100,000 and 3.5 million. And then you should be proposing projects that address energy management, waste reduction, and or productivity enhancements. Another thing the DOE is looking for is for a payback period of at least a year or greater. So this is kind of showing that the DOE is more focused on projects that these grants might have a bigger impact for, not just something simple as changing light bulbs that you could probably do yourself, but some of these more bigger ticket items that have a pretty big impact. So yeah, speaking of which, the prioritization criteria that the DOE is going to consider when they look at your application is 50%. So a big chunk of it is that impact, like I said, as well as project feasibility. Another 25% will be on financial assistance needed, as well as 25% on community benefits. So definitely keep that in mind when you're going through writing up your project proposal, that the DOE will be focusing on these 3 things. All right, and then the application procedure. So if you've already received an IAC assessment, you would be able to apply under workstream number 1. So like I said, there will be different work streams depending, but IAC is just workstream number 1. The application itself is pretty simple. You'll be able to upload the actual assessment report that we would have given you. You can upload that directly to the portal and call out which specific recommendations you want to have funded. You would also submit a project narrative, pretty much explaining your project, and that's how you would apply for the total requested grant funding. You can also show your cost share fulfillment. There are a couple optional forms on like implementation costs form and an emissions reduction form. Those are just optional, but could help strengthen your application. And then please keep in mind, IACs, we're here to help with your application, whether that be, helping with some of the technical writing for your project narrative, helping out with that, as well as if you want us to reanalyze something, or if like your assessment was from a couple years ago and you want us to rerun a few numbers to get some updated information, please reach out. We are definitely here to help with your application. All right, and then just a little bit of additional information. But we do have just some quick links here. Please feel free to check these out. We have our IAC database. You can search by industry type. And we also have some great IAC case studies and newsletters up there. So please feel free to check those out after this webinar. And then, of course, all the IACs that presented here today, we have all of our websites listed here. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. If you have any questions on the implementation grant specifically, as well as, of course, to schedule a no-cost technical energy assessment for your facility. All right.
Okay, so
good on time
Ed,
here.
We're doing great on time. Thank you. Ed, Joaquin, Farzan, Chelsea, thank you very, very much. A lot of really useful information here. We have some time remaining, so let's go through the questions that have been submitted during the presentation. As a reminder, if you have a question, please click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and submit it there. We've had a couple, about 4 or 5 of them so far, about will the slides be provided? And yes, the slides and the recorded version of this presentation will be available tomorrow. There'll be a link sent out to everybody who registered for the webinar. So to answer that question right off, there was also one that was asked about what is the cost associated with this service? And I believe it is free for qualified manufacturing plants, correct?
Yes, that is correct. It is free to the manufacturing plant. It is not free to DOE, who is the entity that pays our expenses, but it's free to the manufacturing facility, yes.
Okay, so there was another question entered into the chat about, do you work with farms? So can a farm qualify, or do they have to have the NAICS codes or the SIC codes? How does that work?
They do have to have the SIC or NAICS code in order to qualify per the DOE criteria. If a farm is doing packaging or any food processing, they could likely qualify. I would say if you're unsure, just contact an IAC and we can explore that with you.
Yeah, I think that's true. We have a number of farms who are also packers that qualify as manufacturers, and CMTC, we have a charter also with our cooperative agreement to only work with manufacturers. So I think that's right on target. Okay, so
Greg, may I add to that?
Sure.
Just one line.
Sure.
Yes, DOE allows us to ask for exceptions. So those farms, yes, of course, they don't qualify because they don't have SIC or NAICS code, as Ed mentioned. But if it is a farm with a lot of energy cost, I suggest that they ask for exception through the IAC center, and we may be able to give that, but we have to ask DOE for an exception.
Okay. Okay, so there might be some wiggle room there. It sounds like outside of having to be a manufacturer. Case by case basis, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. For an assessment, do you apply through the university's website?
Yeah, there's not any sort of application form on the websites, but the websites have the contact information for the IACs, and you can contact any of us giving this presentation, and we can start the process with you in evaluating your eligibility and trying to schedule an assessment.
Okay. So a couple of questions in the pre-submitted ones. We are a steel fabrication shop with approximately 30 welding machines, 10 overhead cranes, and 2 laser cutting machines, 2 robots, and numerous other machines that use a lot of electricity. I'm interested in finding a way to reduce or eliminate the large demand charges that we have or receive from PG&E each month, along with reducing our overall overall electricity consumption. How can I best accomplish this? And are there programs in California that can help me pay for it?
Yeah, I guess I'm hesitating because maybe I should let someone else chime in with some answers, but we certainly do look at demand and demand costs, and for many manufacturers, that's a significant cost. So any of the IACs here will look at that as part of our assessment process. I forgot if there was another part of the question besides demand.
Yeah, there was, he's looking for a way, or he or she is looking for a way to introduce or to eliminate the large demand charges, along with reducing overall electricity consumption. And then how's the best way to accomplish this? And are there programs in California that may help me pay for it?
Yeah, so the best way to accomplish that is something that an IAC would work with you to determine based upon collecting information and doing an assessment of your facility. And there are numerous, there's the implementation grant program that Chelsea spoke about as part of this presentation. There are typically other grants, incentives, or rebates that may be available through your local utility or through other government agencies, and we do pursue those and recommend those when the eligibility for those exists.
Okay, second question. Is there a second round of funding coming up, and how can we be notified in a timely way so we can keep our clients informed?
Yeah, there will absolutely be a second round of funding coming up. Details of it haven't been posted quite yet, so just be on the lookout for that. As well as once they are posted, us IAC centers will generally try to reach out to all of our previous clients that should qualify to give you some heads up that the second round is here.
How long is the wait between request and assessment?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that I would say that most IACs are trying to get as much assessments done as fast as possible, but each IAC has different conflicts with the professor schedules and student schedules. So I think the wait time is it's not major, but it's just a matter of getting everyone herding the cats. The professors are very busy, students are very busy, but that's the only major and the sites are very busy. Our hosts are very busy. So that's the only bottleneck to get through, is like to get on a mutual date that the team and the site host can get on.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Is there anything else we should include besides electric bills? Hold on a second. We lost it here. Anything we should include besides electric bills in terms of energy costs?
We do, of course, look at electricity, but we also look at natural gas. Electricity and natural gas are the primary two energy flows into a facility. Sometimes there are other fuel inputs or some other sources of energy, but primarily we're looking at electricity and natural gas. I don't know if any of the other directors have anything to add on that.
Yes, I can add. So other than electricity and natural gas, so other fuels that you mentioned, so if a facility uses propane for a heater, so we will look at those energy, the energy usage for that. And also if a facility has significant water use and they want to look into potentially reduce that, that is something, again, on a case by case basis, not as common as the others.
Okay. There's a question about the contact info with the video. Yes, the video and the slide we're going to come to here has contact information for all 4 IACs. So yes, that will be taken care of. How can I get in touch with somebody about our farm usage? Question in the Q&A section.
I think the first question, where are they located at? A zip
Okay.
code, if they could provide, or city.
So essentially contact the nearest IAC based on geography, or the nearest two IACs perhaps, to see something like that.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Another question from the pre-asked questions. What equipment is available for renters to take with them should they move to another leased location or buy a building? How do you guarantee that we will automatically receive updates on incentive plans? The last time we enrolled in this, there was no follow through in the program. So what is the kind of the follow through that our listeners should expect, those listening to the webinar, and how does that all work?
I'm not sure I fully understand that question, and I suspect it may relate to a program different than IAC, because we are not renting out any equipment. If a manufacturer were to receive a implementation grant, that basically is money that's provided, and that implementation grant is associated with purchasing equipment. That equipment just becomes the property of the facility and the manufacturer, so there's no restriction on where it's taken.
So if I applied for the grant funding, used it to buy equipment, and then move my facility, there'd be no repercussions, no issues at all. That's what I hear you saying.
My understanding is that, Chelsea, if you have a different answer, please chime in, but I believe DOE may want to verify implementation, but once that's done, then I don't think there's a restriction on use of the equipment.
Okay.
Yeah, there is an initial verification that you have to have the equipment installed, and you know, they can see that verification portion of it. I'm not sure what happens after that though.
Okay. So there was a pre-asked question. Actually, it wasn't a question. It was in the pre-asked questions, but it was a statement. I'm interested in the financial savings. I want to see if this supports a sustainable Earth. And I think you guys touched on that, correct?
Yeah, I think
Joaquin.
all of us are very interested in sustainability, both just in our personal interest and professional interest. That all engineers, it's a major focus, sustainability, and we quantify that in our reports in many different ways. One of them is CO2. We can make some assumptions and calculations on if we are saving them energy. We can tie that to where the source of that energy is and put a number on the CO2 emission saved. So that's good in terms of sustainability. We all are implemented in sustainable energy sources like wind, battery storage, solar panels, and maybe we might even get more exotic source like solar thermal. Some of our colleagues are doing. So we are very interested in sustainability and try to implement that. We are implementing that, and then we're getting more and more aggressive into suggesting those in part of our recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question, if funding is received, when would implementations need to be completed by?
Yeah, sure, I can take that one. It is expected that these projects would be implemented, which includes both the installation and initial operation of the equipment, within 1 year of receiving funding.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Next question. We are a new organic grower that find that power is very expensive in Hemet. I'm looking for assistance on sustainable energy and using solar panels. We would like to use the panels as roofs for our facilities in some capacity. So not exactly a question, but how would the program address that?
Yeah, I guess I would say that, you know, all of these, we make all of our recommendations. They're really customized for every individual facility. So it's difficult to say prior to an assessment what the specific recommendations might be. We do have, as we mentioned in the presentation, some common and top recommendations. For any facility that's interested, my recommendation is just reach out to an IAC if we're not the IAC that's the quote unquote nearest IAC or the one assigned to you, we will refer you to the appropriate IAC, and then we can explore your facility in particular and help you with any energy savings opportunities there might be.
I think I was on mute. Sorry about that. Thank you for that. Would replacing a 50-year-old HVAC qualify for grant funding? Anyone?
Yeah, go ahead, Chelsea.
Yeah, no, very likely, yes. You'd still, want to double check, go through the application process, and, DOE will pick the projects, based on their prioritization criteria, but very likely if it's 50 years old, it probably has very low energy efficiency and would be qualifying for that implementation grant.
Okay, excellent.
One thing I would add to that is that HVAC is a pretty big project, but DOE would prefer something even bigger, like some combined heat and power, or some larger energy intensive process that they can implement. And I forget the exact criteria they're looking for, but I do remember them discussing that to our directors, that they're looking for some big, what I guess one way to put it is a long payback period that otherwise it's very hard to justify this long payback period, but with this implementation grant, as Farzan mentioned, would make it doable and make an impact because of this extra source of funding.
Okay, excellent. Assuming all the criteria is met as described in this presentation, will the manufacturer automatically receive the grant, or are there additional requirements that need to be met? If so, what are they?
You would still have to apply, formally apply for the grant program. So, it's IACs are all under workflow 1, and you would submit a project proposal. It was about 5 or so pages that kind of explained your project narrative, and you would apply for the grant funding. So you do actually have to apply, but once you have the IAC report, it's a little bit easier to upload the report directly. Just call out which recommendations you're looking for funding, and then submit your project narrative to go with it. And again, IACs, we're all here to help with that, so please feel free to reach out.
Okay, so can the grants be used for multiple recommendations within a facility?
Yes, absolutely. As provided that the total amount doesn't exceed the 300,000 cutoff. But yeah, if you have multiple that add up, like 100K here, 50K here, you can add them all those up as long as it's below 300,000.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Let's see here. If a company is going through an expansion and upgrading their facility, their energy costs may increase. Are they still eligible?
Yeah, I'll take that one, I guess. Yes, they certainly are still eligible. It may be a little bit tricky in terms of trying to quantify the exact energy savings that would be associated, because things are changing in the facility. But we would certainly do the best that we can, and they would be eligible.
Okay, excellent. That was the first part of a question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to follow up a little bit on a previous question about the question related to, well, is the implementation grant automatic? Are we guaranteed to get it? And while the answer is no, I do want to emphasize that because a prerequisite to even applying for the grant is getting an assessment, an IAC assessment, the pool of applicants is not tremendously large, and DOE has a lot of money to give away. So I would say, we don't know exactly how many applicants there are, but I would say that if you go through the process, you get an assessment, and there's a recommendation that qualifies to receive grant funding, it's very likely that you would be able to receive that funding.
And just to take that a little wider, make a couple comments on that. Ed, thank you. It's a condition that you have to have had an assessment completed to be able to qualify for the funding, correct?
That is, maybe Chelsea can answer. That's one of the, there's an alternative mechanism as well, but perhaps Chelsea can answer.
Yeah, you do need either an IAC or a CHP TAPS, which is the combined heat and power technical assistant program. So one of these DOE programs between the IAC or CHP TAPS, they are accepting third-party assessors as well, just a different application workflow. So they'll be separated from the IAC pool.
But to your point, Ed, it's still a large pool of money. And it's a very small number of people who can access it because of the criteria of having to do one of those assessment types.
Yeah, one of those assessment types. And, IAC likes to support, the DOE likes to support the IAC program. And I think if you go through the IAC program to get your assessment, then you have a good shot of getting the grant. Got
it. Okay. So as a follow-on question here, if a building is being leased, is it still eligible to get into the free assessment or the incentive funds? I don't think it matters if it's leased or owned, correct? There's no criteria. Any manufacturer who's open, who's doing business can apply whether they lease or own their building or their equipment. Is that correct?
Yep,
Yes,
absolutely.
correct.
Okay. Do you know if there are any plans to assist really small manufacturers who fall short of the $100,000 a year in utilities?
So one thing I can add quickly here is that, sometimes if they're very close to 100,000, or let's say 90,000 something, they can qualify. And as Joaquin mentioned, lower numbers can be accepted as well. So another case that has just recently been we got exception for it, was that if the company has two facilities and those two facilities combined with each other, they have a utility bill of around $100,000. One of them is a smaller R&D facility, and the second building is a manufacturing facility, and they're located in two different cities. But we will be visiting them all in one day, doing the assessment, so they qualify for that purpose.
Okay. There's one last question and we'll wrap up. Are projects that are not listed in the IAC assessment report eligible for the grant funding?
So yeah, projects that they must be listed in the IAC report. So they have to be in there. You can feel free to contact your relevant IAC assessment provider for any follow-up assessments or any updates. We could always try to reanalyze some recommendations, but it has to be in the report to be eligible for grant funding.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just add to that is that I've sort of stated that the IACs are looking at manufacturing facilities and evaluating recommendations that the IACs identify. But certainly if a facility has a particular measure that they're interested in exploring, the IACs will be happy to evaluate those, in the event perhaps that they're looking at, say the person that asked the question about the HVAC system. If we come into a facility and the facility personnel ask us to look at their HVAC system, we will certainly evaluate that. Now, based upon the evaluation, they may or may not qualify for the incentive grant, but we are happy to look at measures that are brought forward by the facilities as well.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Very, very active Q&A today. I'm glad everybody was able to get their questions entered. I believe we've answered them all. I don't see anything more in the open questions or the pre-submitted ones from when people signed up for the webinar. So that's all for the questions. If anyone has further questions, you can reach out to today's speakers via the contact information provided on this slide. Okay. Today's webinar was made possible by funding from MEP, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, a program within NIST, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology. This webinar is brought to you by CMTC, one of 51 MEP centers across the nation in the MEP National Network. MEP centers work to assist small and medium-sized manufacturers to increase their productivity and global competitiveness. As a reminder, you will receive an email tomorrow with a link to today's recording as well as a PDF of the slides. You can also find this webinar along with many other great resources and information about our services at cmtc.com, and for the webinars, cmtc.com/cmtc_events. When this webinar ends, please take 30 seconds to fill out our post-webinar survey. Your feedback is deeply appreciated. And with that, we thank you for your time and participation. We hope that you gained actionable information and insights from the content presented and found it to be a valuable use of your time. Have a great day. Stay safe and healthy.